And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bowling Explained. I'm your host, Jason Thomas. Today, we are talking for the first time on the show about our final category that we haven't touched on since the start of the show, which is the mental game. I think it's part of the game which is maybe the most ignored. I think everybody, when they think of bowling, they think about throwing strikes, and they think about, all those things that you have to do in the physical game to, mostly get more reps, because that's basically what everybody's looking for these days. But if you ask all the tour players, they say pretty much to a person that the game is all played right here. And, I think that's very true at the professional level. There's really not much that sets apart those players other than, their mental acuity. But I do think there's certainly a part of that game that can apply to beginners and intermediate players as well. I think it's a part of the game that I think is ignored as people are coming up through the ranks and learning how to play the game. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about different strategies for different personalities, whether you're more of an artistic type who likes to do everything by feel, or whether you're more of the engineer who likes to, grind everything down to the basic details. How does that apply to your mental game as well? And today, to help us along, we're going to have an excellent guest. We had her on the PWBA podcast a few weeks ago, and I really enjoyed talking to her, especially on the topics relating to mental games. So I thought she'd be a great first guest for us to have. She's the 2012 USBC Queens champion. She's a two-time PBA Women's Series champion, a 15-time Team USA member, not including the 2 years she was on the junior team as well. And she has dozens of medals in international competition, including the World Cup champion in 2006. She's also an author, a mom, and an entrepreneur. Please welcome Diandra Asbaty to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. I was really looking forward to getting a chance to talk to you, specifically on this topic.
Well, and what an honor it is for me. I mean, unless I was like the 30th one on your list and nobody else is available, it's really an honor because the mental game is, in my mind, is like on the top. And for you to associate the mental game with me is amazing. And I just want you to know that I feel really good that you think enough of me and my mental game, unless this is about what not to do mentally, and that you went to the expert.
Right?
Which I don't think is the case, but I can give you lots of examples of when I wasn't the strongest. But at any rate, thank you for having me. It's fun to be back. I always love talking to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, if we're going to talk about things not to do, then I should probably be the one doing all the talking, but we'll avoid that today.
How's your bowling game, Jason?
It's not good. It's not good. It's more physical than mental. I wish I could put my brain in the body of, a young, strong two-hander, and we could see what would happen, because I wouldn't make all the same mistakes I made when I was physically fit.
Yes.
Guarantee you that.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to since the last time we talked to you?
Yeah. So let's see, since that time, school started for my kids. And it looks way different than it ever has. I don't know what your kids' school looks like, but in Chicago public schools, they are not going to actual school physically. And so they are e-learning at home every day.
Yeah. And you're doing that as well.
Okay, you are. So you're at home.
Yeah.
So it's been really different because I realized the week before school started, I can't leave.
Yeah.
Okay. So normally I would drop them off at school, and then I would go practice and give lessons and work out and work on whatever project I was working on. And I was like, I can't even go to the store because they're not old enough to leave alone.
Right.
So I fortunately have found a really great ex-college bowler, Danielle, who has been saving my life. Thank you, Danielle. She's been coming over often because her school, she goes to Roosevelt University, and their school is online.
Okay.
So she's able to do a lot of her homework while the kids are doing their work, and I'm able to leave. So that's been interesting. It's also been interesting because my son is in 5th grade, and he's very self-sufficient and very independent, and I don't even have to check on him because I know he's doing the right thing. But Jersey going into 1st grade, and she's a really good student, but there's a big learning curve between kindergarten and 1st grade. And the first day of school, when I was just helping her get to whatever Google Classroom she needs to get to, I was like, oh, you don't know what a tab is or a link.
Yeah.
And so it didn't dawn on me because, kids are great with electronics, but typically iPads, right? So I got her a Chromebook because they're doing actual work now in 1st grade. And when during the first day of school, I'm like, oh, I need to teach you this. And she's such a quick learner that it's been easy. But I've been kind of busy with making sure that they're good, and they're good. I have been selling out my Elite Youth Tour events, which is amazing because these kids, they want to bowl. I've actually had to run them in 2 squads, which I never used to do. I would just do 1 squad. But because of all the quarantine or the social distancing rules and
protocols.
in the bowling centers, I want to allow as many as I can. So, which makes for a longer day, but it's worth it because the kids, they're showing up. I have a wait list of 26 people right now for this. I have one on Saturday. I have a Elite Tour on Saturday. So that's keeping me going. I love it. I've been coaching. I've been working on Beyond the Lanes. I've been doing a lot more writing, and people who are interested can find beyondthelanes.com. There's a blog tab, and I've been consistently writing about topics that I've learned in my career that are not how to be a better bowler on the lanes, but things that I learned beyond the lanes that helped me become a good bowler. If that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all I've been doing.
Okay, that's not much.
Difficult, Diandra.
Well, it's and I think this topic really applies to youth bowling as well. I mean, I wish it was something that I learned more about when I was younger, because I would have done a lot better in my career if I had known how to control, my anger, my focus, things like that. So, So how do you do it?
Well, let me tell you all my secrets. First, I'm going to take you way back. I remember the first mental game book I ever read. I was 12, and it was called The Mental Game by George Allen, which was a bowling book. And it's interesting because now you don't find a ton of bowling books, but my parents must have found it for me. And I remember the first time I read it, it was all new to me. And I was like, I don't get it, but I'm going to keep reading it until I get it. And there on the front page, the cover, there was a bowling ball stick figure. And there was a thought bubble that said, he's up to bowl. The bowling ball has a bowling ball. And the thought bubble says, there's nothing important about this shot. And when I was 12, I was like, I don't get it. Like, why isn't this shot important? And you can find that book now. I think it's it's very rare. And I think I looked it up once on Amazon. It's like $70 or something.
Oh,
but
wow.
I tried to find it to show it, but
I think we've got a copy here
cool.
at the campus. We've got a lot of cool books. I've got a few in the
shop. So that was my first introduction into what is the mental game. And I think kids cannot be exposed to it too soon. I think if you're bowling and you want to get better at any age, you should start putting in the work. That is the mental game. And now, of course, I realize that the cover means this shot, there's pressure behind, and I feel the pressure, and I want to make a good shot. So I should not try. Essentially. And there's nothing important about this shot, because if I can truly get my mind to believe that, then I will throw the best shot that I can. And I think that is something that everyone should learn. And I talk to my kids about that now. I mean, at 6 and 10.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know we talked on the last on the podcast that you were on, and we talked about you had a moment with Jason Belmonte where you asked him about whether the 10th frame was more important. What was the most important frame?
Yeah.
And he said the 10th frame, and you're like, isn't it the one you're in?
Yeah. Right. But he never read a mental game book. He grew up and won solely because of his like power, confidence, and strength, essentially. You know, like he wasn't winning at that time because he was like in the zone. Yeah. And then when he figured out what even is a zone and how can I live in it,
then
no
it
one
was
can beat him.
Real trouble. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting because, you know, you talk about being fundamentally good bowler, or no, you wish you had, you know, a better game, but you have a good mental game. I have seen bowlers that have perfect fundamentals, like textbook fundamentals, but never win because of their mental game. And I have seen mediocre games that win often because of their mental game. And that's how important it actually is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, you know, just to go back to the distinction of the book you were talking about, do you think it's important that you think every shot is important or that you think every shot's not important?
Oh, I think, you know, it's so funny because we live in a society that constantly tells everyone, just try your best. Try your best. Try. You don't want to try. If you want to be great at something, stop trying and start being. And that obviously isn't something that I understood at 15 or 16 years old. It's a learned trait. And that's how I know everyone can have good mental games, because it's not like you can point at someone and be like, oh, like Clara is a good example. She has a great mental game. Oh, she was just born that way. No, she wasn't. You don't, like, that's kind of a cop-out, right? That's like not realizing that you actually have that same power. And you can look at someone that has a great mental game and kind of make an excuse for it and just be like, well, I mean, she just has a good mental game. Yeah, but you can also have everyone can have a good mental game. But it requires effort and work. And so that's what I want everyone to know, that if you feel nervous, first of all, that's not a negative feeling. So many people are like, oh, I don't get nervous. Really? Yes, you do. And you're lying. Like, you're lying. And it's like, I don't know why it became such a bad thing to recognize that you feel nervous. Like, I feel nervous when something is on the line that matters to me.
Yeah.
Every single pro that is on TV feels nervous.
Right.
But it's all about how you manage it.
Right.
That's the key.
Right. Yeah, you're totally right. By the way, you did mention the point to Darth Vader back here. One of my favorite scenes from the Star Wars, the whole saga, was, you know, the Luke Yoda scene where he says, do or do not, there is no try.
Right? So that is the thing. And when I'm coaching, and I remember being the bowler that was trying. I remember what that felt like. I remember being up there and just like, it's like trying to strike. You cannot try to strike. That doesn't work. What you do is you execute the best shot that you can so that you have more likelihood to strike. But you can't skip to the result. Yeah. Right? You have to be process oriented. And if you can be process oriented and focus on the process, then the result is automatic. Once people start trying, even trying to make a good shot, what does that even mean? Trying, like, you're trying to be perfect. And I also remember that feeling because I've been there. I have been in tournaments, very important tournaments, feeling like I need to be perfect.
Yeah.
And then one of my ball reps at the world ranking tournament years ago, I told him, I was like, it was Rick Benoit. And I was like, I am lost. Did I tell you the story at the last
No.
of the podcast?
No.
I remember I was at Lake Wales, and I was the only American girl. And so, there's already so much weight on my shoulders. And I was like, I'm completely lost. I don't know what to do. And he said, just go up there and feel lucky. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? It sounded like you said, just feel lucky. You know more about lane play, bowling balls, bowling than most people on earth. And you're telling me to go up there and feel lucky? What? But then I did. And then I went up there and I thought, just get lucky. And what did that do? That allowed me to stop trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
I was lost on the lane, but by just shifting that, and that's sort of mental, right? That's just a feeling. I'm up there feeling like, all right, I'm going to get lucky. And
yeah, it's like Tin Cup when he tells him to turn his hat backwards and put his change in from one pocket to the other. And he looks like, he's like, I look ridiculous. And he said, just go hit the ball. Yeah. And so he's like, he starts hitting the ball straight because he's thinking about how ridiculous he looks and not hitting the ball all over the place.
I guess what happened? I got lucky. Then I got lucky. And then guess what? I won. I went from being completely lost and like just distraught to, oh, now I'm just going to expect to, trip the 4 and get lucky. And I think that sometimes when we learn so much about the game, we try to become too perfect because we know too much.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was suffering from. And also I went to the University of Nebraska where they really like hit home fundamentals.
Yeah.
So fundamental, and that's why they win. But that's also when you're learning it, right? I truly learned how to bowl at the University of Nebraska.
Right.
And it's then hard to leave there and let go of that. So I found myself in many tournaments thinking I can throw better. I can throw better. Even if it was a okay enough shot, I can throw it better. And then I remember like my husband, John, would be with me and he went also to Nebraska. So he knew, he's like, it was good enough. Move.
Right.
It's not you.
Yeah, bowling's not a game about how good your perfect shot is. It's a game about how bad your misses are.
Yeah.
If you can minimize the misses, then you can get better at bowling. Because there's usually, except for in very few tournaments, some room to miss. And, the ones who win are the ones that maximize that, find it, and then they're okay with just throwing a good enough shot.
No one is out there winning being perfect. No one, because once you start trying to be perfect, you're not even in contention. And luckily, Rick Benoit taught me that probably without even knowing that that's what he was teaching me. And I've hung on to that. And I like to teach others that and all of a sudden I just felt less tense, because I didn't have to just like hit that and then down lane and then get my ball to change direction. It's just like, and I'm very right-brained, very artistic, and I'm very visual. And so the minute I start thinking in terms of like being more analytical, that's not me.
Yeah.
Whereas my husband, John, is the opposite. He's very analytical and he's very in his head. And I'm so intuitive driven. Like I'm very heart focused and he's very head brain focused. And it's important to know who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what was, this weekend we had the US Open golf tournament and Bryson DeChambeau won. And he's very much, what's interesting about the whole thing is, the commenters after he won the tournament, they're saying, oh, golf's ruined. This guy who does everything different. He's got all the same length shafts on his clubs. And we're very familiar with that story in bowling. people don't like something different that comes out and dominates. But he's very much if you listen to him between shots, he's analyzing everything down to the nth degree, right? Like if they let him bring a protractor out on the green, he would, right? But
well, it gave me a little anxiety when I saw that the screen with my picture on it before this started, and there was all of these like formulas. I was like,
oh yeah,
that's so not me. But it's good to know who you are,
Yeah. Let's put it up there.
No.
For a second. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, so let's talk about that for a second. There are these two types of people typically. Like if you just categorize how people think, right? There's the right brain, left brain type person. What is the difference? I think both can be successful, right?
Oh yeah.
Obviously, Chris Barnes is the left brain guy that's going to be thinking about every detail. And then, you have someone like probably Jason Belmonte would be a good example, very much a feel player, and he can play any angle, but he doesn't do it by calculation. He just does it by feel. What is the difference when you're dealing with, those two different types of people in trying to develop a mental game strategy?
Well, I think the main thing around the whole idea that there's two different types of people, bowlers, is knowing who you are. Like, which bucket do you fall into? Because fundamentally, I'm going to coach them the same, but they're both going to have different issues. They're going to have different problems. The people that are more of the engineering, data driven, they are going to have a hard time feeling lucky also because
they don't believe in luck.
Right. They're so into like calculating, and I'm not that way. I'm very, very artistic. But maybe sometimes I need to be more analytical. So I think it's not about how I would coach them differently, because fundamentally the mental game stays the same, right? It's how do you deal with pressure? How do you focus on the things that you can control? And all of that stays the same, but the problems between the two different people could be different, and I cannot relate to people that are super finicky bowlers. Like, Norm Duke is a good example. He just needs to have his feel like perfect.
Yeah.
And he can't go otherwise. He's like taking out tape, putting it in, taking it out, putting it in. Kelly Kulick is another one that is very sensitive to feel. And they both really overanalyze. They're both really great.
Yeah.
So you can have great bowlers in both buckets. It's just I can't relate to that, because I was just talking to my pro shop guy yesterday, and he is like, you don't use switch grip, because I'm with turbo. And normally if you're, with turbo, you're using switch grip.
Yeah.
And I was like, I might be the only pro on tour that I'm not using it, because I can make all the balls feel the same. I can work them all out the same. I have the same feel. I'm not distracted by it feeling different. And if it does feel different, I'll fix it. But a lot of people, and thank goodness there are things like switch grip, where you can literally have the same exact feel in all of your balls, because the people that are like Kelly and Norm, before those existed, it was just harder, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, what do you think there are some rules that apply to both? Like, for example, there have been studies done on players' brain waves, between shots and then during a shot, and they find that pros have very active brain waves between shots, but when they're on the approach, nothing. Right. So would that be kind of a universal, tip for both of those kinds of minds? Like, hey, once you're on the approach, just commit to the shot you've decided to throw. And
well, it's all about quieting your mind, right? And whether you're an artist or an engineer, you need a quiet mind when you step up there. It's the in-between that feels different. The in-between the shots. Analyzation is different. Gut is different. Those analyzers don't have my intuition. And as an intuitive person, I don't have that ability to analyze like them. So I don't think any is right or wrong, but what I do think is that it's important to know who you are.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Because you can like if I go play golf and say, hey, I'm gonna hit a 20-yard draw around this corner here, I can't hit a draw. So it's like that analysis doesn't do me any good.
Right.
Because I can't physically perform it.
And if you're asking yourself, which one am I? I know the bowlers, some bowlers that I'll have conversations with will be like, I'll say, how did you bowl? And they will literally give me the play-by-play.
Yeah.
Pins, hits, everything.
Yeah.
I don't do that. Like, my brain just doesn't work like that. But, there's so many bowlers that can recall that data so quickly. I think I'm really good at letting go. And so once I've done it and I've obtained the information that I need from that shot, I let it go. I don't think back to it. Whereas, I just, Sean Rash comes to mind. Like, he probably can remember what ball he threw 3 years ago at this tournament and the fifth game. Like, he has that type of brain.
Yeah.
I do not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you take that into real life too. Like sometimes I remember I was dating someone in college and she broke up with me and I didn't really have much of a reaction. And she's like, aren't you upset? And I'm like, yeah, I'm, it is what it is. I'm moving on. But it wasn't because I didn't like her. It was just because bowling had trained me to accept things and to move on. Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You people just process things differently. And can you be more like the other? I think you can be, but it's not easy for me to be data driven or analytical.
Yeah.
Even day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just really rely on my gut. Like how does this make me feel?
Yeah. Yeah. So you this was kind of an interesting point. I wanted to get into it when it came to beginner and intermediate bowlers, but you talked about it in the context of youth bowlers where it's, they're almost too young to know some of these things at the point they're at. But does that same thing apply to, like an older person who's, just picking up the game? What should those people think about when it comes to the mental approach? When, you really can't even make two shots the same at that point, what from a mental standpoint, is it even important?
Yeah. There's so many different ways that I can take this. So it's hard to like pare it down, but I think one of the most important things that you can do from a mental perspective is when you throw a shot to take your emotion out of it. And that's really ironic for me to say because I'm so heart focused in my life that it took me a little while to understand, okay, when I throw a bad shot and I feel it in my heart, it's not going to help my next shot. And so how can I take that emotion out when that's my first instinct, right? So when I work with anyone, this could go for pros. So I'm probably helping my competition right now, but you're welcome, Jason. Anything for you. So when they throw a shot and they react to it, that's an emotional reaction, right? And I tell them, you need to get to the point where you throw a shot and you process the shot like you're a computer. And you look at it objectively, not subjectively. And if you throw it right, you acknowledge that I threw it right. And then you figure out why. And then the next shot, you don't. But as soon as you're just like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or there's a terrible shot. That was horrible. What am I doing? When we've all been there, right? We've all done that. And if you can eliminate that from your shot making and you truly can be more robotic, which is funny because
So
That was
you're talking about how you're all feelings
yes.
but
Yeah. And
still,
so I had to that was something I had to learn to do, is to become less emotionally attached to the frame. And you can tell the bowlers that are great at it, right?
Sure.
That can
Norm Duke is the best.
Yeah.
He'll never show negative emotion.
Right.
I mean, he plays a game with his opponent, and I think the best example I have of, and it's not a Norm Duke example, but Robert Smith used to be a very emotional player, and he bowled the U.S. Open finals one year, and he bowled Mike Fagan. And it was one of Mike Fagan's first shows, and you could tell from the pre-match interview that Mike Fagan was barely able to function. He was so nervous, right? Yeah. And so Robert starts the match, and he throws a pretty good shot, and the ball doesn't hook, and he leaves it 2-8. And he starts talking to himself out loud about how, the lanes aren't doing what he's expecting him to do, and he's lost. And you just see Mike Fagan just relax, because he's like, well, my opponent's lost. I can relax a little bit here. I have a chance. Mm-hmm. And Robert ended up losing because Mike started with the front four. Robert ran him down and had a chance to win, but Fagan actually picked up a 6-7 to win the match.
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. You're a data person.
Well, I just remember it closely because I was working with Robert at the time. But I told him after, I said, you gave that match away in the interview, in the first frame, when you, but, to get back to the kind of the beginners, I always talk to my son is a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. And so he never got into bowling because he could never get over the fact that he wasn't good at it at the beginning. And so is there some advice that you give to people, so that they can just forgive themselves and just keep working at the sport?
Yeah, I think that you need to find the fun in it, for one. And that's not a mental tip. That's just, if it's not fun on a fundamental level, then why even do it, right? I think it's setting goals on your level. You can see bowlers and you can aspire to be them, but you are not them. So you should not compare yourself to them. I think on a youth level, or if you're just getting into it, my main advice is to understand your brain, because it is amazing. Like, our brains are crazy complex, and to be able to understand how to focus when it's hard to focus, how to breathe when it's hard to breathe, visualization, and how super important that is, and what actually happens in your brain when you visualize something. I would say on a young level, beginner's level, start reading books and start educating yourself with what a mental game even is, right? Because everybody talks about it, but what actually is it? And unless you're teaching somebody, they don't know. Like, it's not something that just everybody should know what it is, right? It's complex, and maybe they know the basis of what it means, but really truly taking a deep dive into your brain and what happens when something is on the line, and what happens when you are distracted, and how to bring yourself back. And like I said, I started at a really young age. At 12, I was trying to understand what this mental game actually even is. So no matter how old you are, if you're a beginner bowler or beginner at anything, it's to understand what it even means. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the interesting thing, because I think both of us, I started bowling at a very young age, and I rapidly, by the time I was 15, I was averaging 220, and it was very easy for me. I don't know how else to explain it. Where it's, probably the same thing as learning a language. If you learn it when you're 3 years old, it's very easy. But then when you try to learn it when you're 30, not so much. Can you even, relate to people that, are picking up the game in their 30s and it doesn't just come naturally to them? I mean, probably for us, it was more about just the passion for wanting to be good at it drove us to get good at it. But
I mean, to be completely transparent, I totally know what that feels like, because I'm really bad at being bad at things. Ask my husband. Like, that's why I don't golf.
So I don't ice skate.
Right.
So you can break bones if you're
And I
bad at
have
it.
that self-awareness. Okay. Like, I totally acknowledge the fact, because it is hard and you're not good. And for me, it's more of like, oh, I don't have time to put into this to be even mediocre at it. So why even do it? It's not fun. So people picking up bowling, which I coach those people, and I love when they find me, because I'll meet them at the lesson and I'll be like, so tell me how long you've been bowling. And they're just, they're in their 30s and they just picked it up. And I was like, I'm so sorry it took you so long to realize how awesome bowling is. But I'm happy to, like they did the right thing. They found a coach.
Right.
And then when you have a coach and you're learning it for the first time in your 30s, you have a focus. You're not trying to figure it out yourself, which it's impossible to. I mean, maybe it's not, maybe somebody's done it, but in their 30s, it's very hard to pick up any skill and teach yourself knowing nothing about it.
Yeah.
So I think if somebody is bowling for the first time, my first tip is to go to bowl.com and find a coach in your area. Because it's like me trying to golf.
Well, yeah, I know how that is too.
Yeah.
What are some of the best tips that you've ever gotten, in your career about the mental game, and maybe some of the best, books you've read or people that have influenced your?
Yeah, that's a good question. My first great advice was feel lucky. No, that wasn't my first. that was a really important one. I learned at a young age that there are way more mental game books for other sports than there is bowling. And so I became a really big fan of, ironically, golf books. So mentally, I'm a really good golfer. But Bob Rotella writes, golf is a game of confidence. Also, golf is not a game of perfect. And this one it's life is not, but also he wrote the golf one. Okay. So these were really good books. My all-time favorite mental game book is The Inner Game of Tennis. And I know a lot of bowlers have heard of that. The Inner Game of Tennis is like the Bible for me. Like, I could always have it. Right now it's in my phone, so I didn't bring it out, but it's like audiobook.
Yep.
And you can flip to any page and just start reading and like jog your memory. I'm like, okay, yeah. Like, you don't even have to read it in sequence. That book everyone should read if you want to become better at bowling, because it's very easy to relate to bowling.
Sure.
Also, things like this book, As You Think. This lived in my accessory bag for many, many, many years. Like, even when I was on tour, it was always in my bag. And I feel like when I was struggling on the lanes, I would actually pull it out and start reading it. And it did a couple of things. It reminded me of some important things, but also it distracted me from the mess that I was making on the lane. And I was able to sort of like reset. And then in between, I remember so many Team USA events, team trials, that, because there's just so much pressure. You really want to make the team. I just remember feeling like I needed a distraction. And so I would do that, which I think is also a good tip. There's one particular book that Ron Hoppe, I worked with him at the International Art of Bowling, and we coached together, and he recommended this book, and it's called With Winning in Mind by Lanny Basham. And the interesting thing about this book is that after I read it, 3 months later, I won the Queens. So ironic? I don't know. I don't think so. Coincidental. So there's some really good things in here. Also, you asked who I've worked with. As you get, better at anything, I think it's important to seek out sports psychologists to help you. Like they go to school for that, right? We're not supposed to automatically know. We kind of need to learn. And so how can you learn? Well, Dr. Dean Hinnitz is somebody that I've worked with for many, many years. And he's been really instrumental in a lot of my success. And he has some great books, Focus for Bowling. And he's put in the work and the time to understand bowling, which I really appreciate because he's a gymnast.
Yeah.
So he totally could have just went that direction, but he found some intrigue into bowling and decided that is the direction that he wanted to go. And I've had many phone conversations with him. I would talk to him before TV finals, and he really helped to like recenter me and get my thoughts in the right place and understand how important it is to not try, but to be. And I have some really great examples of when I did that really bad. I don't know if did we talk about this on the podcast? Did we talk about my first Queens televised final?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, yes.
Where I made every mental mistake that there was, and it felt different because it was live. I mean, I can make up all the excuses in the world, but
sure, that's what bowlers do, right?
Hey,
we have this excuse now, right?
Listen, I'm not making excuses because I'm a self-aware bowler. And I recognize that I made every mistake that there was to make. There's no excuse. But because I put myself in that position and I learned those really, really hard lessons, I was able to become much better at managing what I didn't manage on that one show. So Dr. Jane is somebody that has really helped me in my career understand and pick up the pieces and understand why that even, like, what just happened. And
Okay. Well, it's definitely a person I would love to have on the show in the future.
You should totally. He would definitely do it.
Yeah.
He has also a lot of fun stories, and he's just a great guy.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about Jason Belmonte quite a bit with you. You have a unique insight into his psyche because you guys have been friends for a long time. Mm-hmm. And there was one piece I wanted to talk about to kind of close the show with. I know a lot of young kids now are interested in the two-handed game. There's still unfortunately quite a bit of resistance out there to the style. And I was curious, have maybe if you've ever had a conversation with him about this, or do you believe this might have impacted his mental approach to the game? But do you feel like because of having to deal with the adversity of people saying he's doing bowling the wrong way growing up his whole life, that's made him mentally tougher now that he's gotten older?
Yes, this is the short answer. I know that when I talked to him, and I know his story, and it's funny because my blog post this week that I'm going to be posting is about him and when he was young, how all the coach, like young, like less than 10 years old, and his parents would drop him off in Sydney at a bowling center because they owned a center. And so they were going to meetings in Sydney. And he was at clinics, and the coaches are like, when you want to stop messing, or he would say mucking around, when you want to stop mucking around, we'll help you. And he's like, but I'm not. Like, he's like, the coaches are like, when you want to start bowling the right way.
Yeah.
And he's like, but this is my right way. And that's really powerful to me.
Yeah.
What's even more powerful is that he didn't let anyone tell him how to do it his way. And there's something to be said for that. And I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes that who am I to say that you're not doing it right? Because some textbook out there many years ago said it this way. That doesn't mean I'm going to let people like fall off their shots, right? Or like pull through from the top of the swing. I mean, there's some non-negotiable things out there, but when it looks a little different, it's not wrong. And so he had to fight his whole childhood, the emotions of everybody is questioning how I'm doing this. And I guarantee he didn't have the confidence then that he has now. He could have done two things. He could have just conformed, right? Because that's what people do.
Yeah.
They are like, it's my latest blog post was talking about like the narrative that people like to write for other people. And a lot of my life, people were trying to tell me who I was, and it wasn't who I was. And I could have became that narrative, or I could stick to what I know is true and what narrative I'm writing. And so the same goes for him. He could have just become that, but he did what was uncomfortable, and it was uncomfortable to fight through all the naysayers and all the people that are like, you're never going to be as good as you could be if you just bowled normal. And that's a special trait, because then he goes on to become the best in the world.
Right.
And he just, not only did he prove all those people wrong, but he showed everyone that if you opened your mind to not what you just think is right, but that it's like the Fosbury flop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that one of the great things that he's done is he's, helped these kids that love this style and now bowl like this, because he's proven that it works. He's really paved the way for them not to have to deal with all the idiocy that he had to deal with.
Right. And not only did he deal with it when he was a child, but he dealt with it on tour.
Yeah.
And I know how it was for him because I was there for it. And everyone taking credit away from you and calling you a cheater because you do it different. I mean, how does anyone become the best in the world after that? Because that's like a different kind of person.
Yeah, but you have to think that also because he was able to overcome that, that's why he's distanced himself so much from the rest of the group, right? Because he's mentally tougher.
But I guarantee when he finally cut through it all, right? And then he became successful, and now he's on the biggest stage there is in bowling. I'm pretty sure he initially thought the worst was over.
Yeah. But
then he had to deal with it all over again. And now I think it's finally getting to a point where, for one, it's not a fluke. Two, everybody's following him and also doing it. And they're on tour doing it and proving his point. And I think it takes a certain type of guts, and you have to be really stubborn. And he is super stubborn. That's why he wins, because he's like, oh, and part of me is too, in a different way, when people are like, oh, you're not gonna be able to do it. Did you just say that I couldn't do something? Because now I'm for sure gonna do it. And I've got a little bit of that in me too. When I was pregnant with my kids and people were like, oh, you think you're going to have natural childbirth? Like, I thought that I was going to, but you're not going to be able to do it. And I was like, it sounded like you said I wasn't going to be able to do something. Now I'm going to do it. But that's what it takes to be a champion, right? You can't let anyone, you cannot let anyone tell you who you are. You get to write that.
Yeah, no, I think that point's come across throughout the whole show. Just be who you are, and don't try.
Don't try, just be.
Do.
Just do.
Well, I'd love to have you on the show again. I'm sure we'll do it again. I know you mentioned it at the top of the show, but where can people find, what you're working on these days?
Yeah, beyondthelanes.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I send it out weekly, and there's just a whole bunch of like life lesson tips based on my experiences in my career. So what I have found lately is that it's really resonating with people. Some of my posts on Instagram, my last one, in fact, which was about comparison and how hard it is to be good at something and to give credit to the other person and not feel that jealousy, but more admiration. It was something that really obviously hit a lot of people because a lot of a lot of great bowlers reached out to me and said, yes, I've dealt with that. I know how that is, but I am talking about things that nobody wants to talk about, that everybody wants to kind of pretend things are perfect, but they're not. It's hard. It's hard to be competitive at anything. And so I want to give them content that they can relate to and also realize it's okay. It's okay if you were that way, and it's okay if you change. And also coaches reaching out to me and saying, I'm going to use this with my kids. Like, I know that I'm right where I need to be because of the response that I'm getting. So beyondthelanes.com. Also follow me on Instagram at Diandra Asbaty. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook and all the places.
Awesome. Well, good luck with everything you're doing, everything you're working on. Stay safe.
Yes.
Continue to be.
I'm going to be. Are you going to be?
I am. I'm going to try.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anytime.
Yeah, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, bye. See ya.
So that was Diandra Asbaty, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you got a lot of insight into the mental game out of that. A lot of new books to read, new blogs to visit, and obviously, if you're a youth bowler, check out the Elite Youth Tour as well. So hope you enjoyed it. We've got a lot more great stuff coming at you this week on Bowl TV. Later on Friday, we've got our number 8 season in the 20 greatest seasons. We've got another new episode of Inside the OC coming at you on Thursday with Matt Cannizzaro and Aaron Smith. But hope you enjoyed that episode today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them below in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll get back to you after the show with some answers on those questions. But hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a great day. And remember, on Bowl TV, bowling lives here.